Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. My name is Jason Sutton, aka The Guru, and I've got a very special episode for you today. It's what we call Teacher Tuesdays or Guru Tuesdays at the Carmel Golf Academy, which is our weekly training sessions where we share some of our lessons. We basically feed off one another. It's not just me up there talking to the guys and telling them what they should be doing. I'm really getting feedback from some of their experiences they've had in the last week, and we just start sharing ideas, which I think is a fabulous way to get better. And I'm improving as well as my staff, so I'm really always excited to feature my staff because I'm so proud of them. Seth Merz, my junior golf director and staff instructor, and then Robbie Failes, my newest staff instructor, are going to share some insights on some of their lessons. So you're going to hear sort of behind the scenes. So we were trying to video this thing. We had the iPad going, but it cut out after about 10 minutes. So you're going to have to use your visualization skills on some of the lessons that we're going through. But hopefully myself and my staff give you a clear picture of sort of what we're looking at. And I think there's a lot of nuggets to be gleaned from these conversations. So it was really fun. So I hope you enjoy these little behind the scenes looks, something a little different, not the long interview style that I normally do. So let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to email the show at golfgurushow@gmail.com if you want us to answer or myself to answer any questions for Guru Friday. But this is sort of a special edition hashtag Guru Tuesday training. So let's get to my conversation with the boys. I hope you enjoy it. All right. So we're here with Guru Tuesdays. All right. Little training session with the staff. Say hey, Seth.
Another beautiful day here in the Carmel Country Club.
Yeah. Put your mic up a little closer to your mouth there, Rob. There you go. So thought we'd just record some audio of kind of what we do on a weekly basis most of the time. Now we're getting a little bit busier, but it's good to be back with you guys and share some stuff. So we're going to talk about some lessons. You guys have some questions, so we can actually hook this up on Guru Friday if it comes out good, which I think it will. But I was going to start by showing you guys a lesson that I did with one of my college players using boditrak and showing you how, and you won't be able to see this on the video, but I'll sort of talk my way through it, and you guys will be able to see it because part of it's on my phone and part of it's on the iPad. So that the audio will be out, but the video will be a little bit suspect. But I filmed 3 or 4 swings with this young man, and we were working on basically as we sort of go through his pattern. He was always been kind of lifty and laid off, which we've worked on a little bit, but he's always played really well from there. So the main thing was getting the club shallow enough in the downswing where he could rotate his torso and get it open enough to hit straight balls and cuts. And if he needed to draw it, he can. But he's always been really super vertical coming down, has to sort of right side bend a lot, and caused him some impact issues. And then especially with the driver, it got really ugly. So we're going to get to the driver. But this is one of the swings that we did. So I did 4 swings with him on the boditrak, and the big thing that I noticed right away was how much he got into his right foot, very, very toe heavy. So he was almost 75 to 90 in his right toe at the top of his backswing. And the interesting thing is he sort of got away with it with 3 swings. 3 swings, he actually got his COP trace left soon enough. It's pretty linear, and hit it relatively flush. But then the one that came out really bad, we'll see. Let's start from the beginning here because number 1, he's, 63 in his right foot at address. 53. So he's a little bit more on his right foot at address, and it actually gets a little worse, I think, as it starts. 54, 57. So as it goes back, you can see how he's really lighting up that right toe at the top, and he's got, 81, you can tell me? 82. He almost gets to 90 on a couple of swings. There he is, 90. Yeah, so top of backswing, he's 90 into his right toe. So then early transition. So we're down to left arm parallel, 0 pressure shift to the left. And he's 82 in his right toe. So he hasn't moved that center of pressure ball at all forward. Now, on the previous 3 swings, he did. Okay, but this is the thing is, you know, the more video you take and the more you sort of let that player start to hit, then you start to see the bad ones and go, okay, well, this is the reason why, right? So obviously we need to get him a little more stable under how he's loading into his trail foot, because you can see the club's doing exactly what it needs to be doing. So that's why if you're just looking at video, it's very difficult sometimes to pick some of these things up, right? You're like, well, why did he hit that one so bad? Well, he never got, so at impact, he's 50-50, just now gets the ball left to center. And then now he's into his left foot at, you know, P8.
On the ones that he hit good, where was his center of pressure at impact?
It was about, he had to back up actually. So let's go to one that he actually hit pretty well.
What was his miss when he hit it? Like that one that was bad, what was the miss?
Really thin.
Okay.
Super thin. And left. Like he'd get pulls. Right? We're trying to work towards the fade pattern here.
Okay.
So he'd get pulls or he'd get kind of weak shots to the right. So here's, again, sort of the same numbers. Go to the top, 91 in his right toe, but then you're going to see the transition. See how the ball moves right there. Mm-hmm. So pretty good.
It's totally different.
Right, totally different. And this same kid, 2 swings.
Right, so there's no instruction in between 2 swings.
No. This is simply him. We're just collecting data at this point. I haven't said anything to him. All I said was hit some shots.
That's crazy.
Because he, and the main goal of the lesson was to fix his driver. Okay, and even though this is a 7-iron, I was just having him hit some shots just to collect the data. So he gets left foot 80. What is that? 80%. Mm-hmm. Yeah, at left arm parallel coming down. Little toe heavy, but not crazy. I mean, the whole left foot's lit up, but watch how the ball backs up. So there's a little more backup there.
Is that coming from like the side bend you were mentioning?
Yeah, the side bend, right. So he's trying to rotate, and he has a little bit of trouble. So let's go back to, all right, so let's move forward here, because some of them are on the iPad. Like I said, we'll pull them up here in a second. Let me see. There's driver. And we can kind of see if this was one of the old ones. No, okay, so here's after his first piece of instruction. Okay, so I show him the video, show him the pressure trace and where he's loading. And so my instruction to him was, I need more pressure shift into your right heel, feeling more right heel. Okay, now, and I did preface that by saying I don't need more weight shift. I need you to just rotate and push into the ground more with your right heel. So pretty simple. So this is him just doing a little. Hold on, he's just going to do a practice backswing. And then I did have him I showed him what, 50-ish, 50 or 52 left felt like. So I wanted him a little more in his left foot at the start, which would give him a.
How freaked out was he with that?
He was very freaked out. Yeah, he couldn't believe. He felt like he was leaning so far left, and then I had to explain to him it's not the center of mass that we're moving left; it's the center of pressure. So I wanted his upper body stable, so he's got a little bit of right side tilt with the left pressure being more 52 to 54. Then here he is just making a backswing. There we go. So that's, yeah. So, and then here's something we've talked about, all of us with boditrak, is even though it might be 60 on his right toe flashing on the screen, if he's lighting up the toe and the heel evenly, I think that's pretty good. So he's 57.43 at the top, which has got a pretty good platform to kind of push off. So that's just. And left arm parallel now, he's much more in his left side. So now he went from 70 to 60. I mean, it's not bad. But again, I'm just giving him a position where he can actually rotate his chest, get his torso open more so that he can control the face because if he doesn't, he gets it left, and he didn't want it going left.
So I guess this would be kind of an interesting segue to talk about putting the club in different positions and expecting the body to necessarily change reacting to it versus times where, okay, the club might be in a better spot, but the player doesn't have the motor pattern to be able to respond. And so you actually have to get in there and train the body to do what you would expect it to do for your better athlete. But for those who still have that old pattern, you can't always assume that just putting in the club a different spot is going to necessarily change the pivot.
Correct. Yeah, because the club was moving reasonably well.
Yep.
Yeah, it wasn't like we were getting tipped out. It wasn't like he was swinging too far to the left. It was more that he didn't have the awareness of how he was using the ground.
Right.
So I had to go more body. And again, that's, you've heard me talk about it in former shows when we did the Guru Friday, was the difference between teaching average players and teaching good players. And this kid's a good player. He plays at a D1 college and is a very good player. So he just didn't know. He just didn't know what he was supposed to feel. Right. So, and it also was, and the cool thing was after we made the change, and we can go through the driver here as well. Let's see. I gave him, as far as drills, I gave him a little step drill, like the mini step drill. I didn't want him like lifting his left foot way up and rotating so much. I just wanted him to get the idea of, okay, one, we're going to load the trail foot properly in a stable position, and then two, we're going to plant the left heel at the right time and then rotate. So I think it's on my phone, but we'll just look at this other one here. So here he is. This is well into the lesson. So now he's 62 left, just exaggerating it a little bit. Now, here's the cool thing that I want to share with you guys, and it goes right to Robbie's point there, is he's always had a tough time with his takeaway always goes way outside, okay? I mean, he's always kind of did that, but I've sort of always pushed him into, I want his hands in a little bit more. I want the the club feeling like it goes around him, which is never going to get inside because he's so ingrained with that pattern of taking it outside. Now I understand why he has a difficult time making the change. He could always do it in a practice swing, but as soon as he hit the ball, if the pressure goes to his trail toe, where do you think the club's going to go? It's going to tend to go outside, right? Yeah. So as soon as I got him loading his trail foot properly, like, look at this. This is crazy. You can see his hands got closer to his body. Some depth of the hand path. Got the hands and the club moving more around him, which, again, is going to help his top of swing. Because I'm still trying to get him a little less laid off. I mean, I don't care that it's a little laid off, but I'm always kind of pushing him into the opposite pattern. And that was a really cool thing to see. And then now at the top of the swing, you guys probably can't all see that, but I'm going to blow it up as big as I can, is now he's 51 right toe, 49 right heel, which is super stable. As opposed to 90-10. Put your mic up there.
As opposed to 90-10.
There you go. So, and he's still loaded his right side beautifully. And then now he can really get to his left side. So you can see beautiful transition there. So now he's 84 left with left arm parallel.
Some beautiful arm, wrist stuff going there.
Oh, yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah. And this kid doesn't know, but I mean, all I'm doing is trying to get him to hit it better, right? He doesn't have to know all the details of what us teachers are sharing with him. And we're talking about him on this podcast. So, and you can see now that his lead foot is working better magically, right? I mean, I didn't tell him anything about his lead foot. If he's not too much into his left toe too early, now he can rotate. All right, so we know that toes are great for jumping, stable feet, and heels are better for rotating. So that sort of took care of that, and then it really helped us when we got to the driver, because again, he literally was hitting. He was tipping it out so hard in his downswing, he was hitting dead in the heel and like hitting like tops almost sometimes. He's like, Coach, I go along, I'm hitting it okay. Next thing I know, I hit a grounder, So if you look, and he's got an awesome, what we call it.
With the driver he was?
Yeah, with the driver. I mean, he hit it into that net right there one time. This guy's, this kid can play. So here you are, driver. There's driver, right? Yeah, it's a little dark, but. And I told him, we don't need as much lead foot pressure in the setup. So I said, just, set up normal. And this is sort of his normal setup, pretty basic. So he still gets a little bit heavy into his right foot. But you can see how he can really get it exploded, and he shallows it out nicely. Coming into it, he's ready to just kill it right there. So now he goes from 72 left, and there's the little backup, classic Z-Trace sort of Justin Thomas look right there to his footwork, and there's the Z-Trace back into lead heel. And he started just ripping it. He was carrying it like 290, and he's back. And I immediately took him onto the golf course after that too, because I'm just like, all right, we've hit really good shots here. Let's go see if we can make it happen on the golf course. We took him out on 16.
Love that.
He hit three balls right over the bunker from the black tees. So that's like a 280 carry, 285 carry, and just not like nothing. So pretty cool stuff. All right. So do you guys have any questions or anybody you want to kind of pull up?
Yeah, I had this actually was pretty recent. And for you guys who follow the show, I'm willingly giving up my name here. I was a Curious George guy.
Oh, unveiled.
We
No.
had no idea.
Who asked the question about getting into an impact position? Because what I've been thinking about recently is a lot of the issues that I see in transition. How many of those issues are because the player doesn't have a good concept for how to move the club and literally what should happen at impact and how to release their angles in the club through the golf ball. So part of this I need to give credit to Tyler Farrell and his Golf Smart Academy, giving them another plug, because I really stole this drill. He calls it the tic-tac-toe drill, and for this student I called it I believe I called it the tortoise and the hare drill. But it started by just doing some static impact positions. So I wanted him to have a clear image of where the body and where should the club be at impact. And when I asked him the question, I got to give credit to Sean Kennedy for this, because before this time I wasn't asking them, like, what do you think impact should look like? I was just kind of getting in there and moving them and just trying to tell them where it was. But when he showed me where he thought impact should be, there was zero torso rotation. And it basically looked exactly like it did at setup. I mean, it was
common misconception.
It was a mirror image of setup,
Right.
And so using Jason's answer on the podcast, I kind of
When
reversed.
you've seen me do that before.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like,
I had him kind of hold the club up at waist height, tell him, basically what I wanted his arms to look like, and then to transport those arms down to impact with his body.
Mm-hmm.
So once I got there, basically I had him take note of where his trunk, I didn't specify pelvis and torso because I just wanted him to understand that his trunk needed to be pointed more left of the golf ball at impact. And so I put a little, using the chalk, I put a little X kind of out on the ground, kind of down in front of the golf ball, telling him, okay, by the time the club gets to the ball, that's where I need your trunk to be pointed. And so in Tyler Farrell's tic-tac-toe drill, basically what you do is you take a very kind of restricted backswing. He calls it 9 o'clock. And so the goal is that from that backswing and I called it the tortoise and the hare, I want the tortoise, meaning the trunk, to get to that X before the hare gets to the golf ball.
I like that.
And so once he was able to just move it from the backswing down to the ball, then we did a couple push ball progressions and teaching really what those arms should be doing through the release. So I'm really giving him a total picture of how he's gonna get the club down to impact and what he's gonna do through impact. And a really cool moment happened because I was struggling for the longest time to get this student to twist the shaft to get the face to close in the downswing. And he was, constant spinning the club open, having to move that low point back in order to get the ball at the target. And so when he did the first tic-tac-toe, what he noticed is that when his trunk pointed left, as the club was approaching the golf ball, the face was pointed, I want to tell you, 40 degrees to the right of the golf ball.
Yeah,
and so
very common.
And so as he was moving there, I asked him, I said, take a look at your club face. I said, where do you think that ball's going to go? And so immediately, once he was aware of that, he twisted the shaft to get the face to look at the golf ball. It's like, okay. He said, so is that what needs to happen when I'm taking the club down? I said, yeah, absolutely. I said, so I want you to get your tortoise to the X and then notice where that face is. So what do your arms and wrists have to do to make the ball go at the target?
So at what point did you tell him that needed to happen?
I told him that it needed to happen as he was moving the club down
to like
the
early
ball.
transition.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the thing that I see is even if they understand that information is like what time
Right.
does that need to happen and how early it needs to happen for most
Right.
average players that are all going the other direction.
And what was interesting is that when we first did a couple, and these were just like 9 to 3s, but I said, okay, I want you to keep doing these 9 to 3s, but be cognizant of, again, making sure that the tortoise is beating the hare, making sure that the chest is pointing to the X. And the first couple went to the right, and so then we had to review, okay, all right, so how do these wrists have to move? And once he was kind of put both of those pieces together, what the body should do and what the arm should do, the downswing started to really come into shape. So I wanted to share just these two. And I did put some stuff in the way, so he did have a couple constraints, but there's the before image, so shaft is pretty high,
so
face is
vertical.
spinned open, and this was the after where
So you got the noodle on top of
Yep,
the hands. Yeah,
and-
I like that.
But I didn't actively tell him to spin the shaft until he kind of figured it out.
Yeah.
So it was kind of
self-discovery.
So talking about things that I've learned from Jason is kind of reverse engineering things that need to happen earlier by giving them a picture of what needs to happen later. By giving him the picture of the sequence and where his body needed to be relative to his arms, it allowed him to reverse engineer that handle twist in order to get the face pointed where he wanted the ball to go.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, well done.
Thanks.
Yeah. How about you, Seth? You got some
I've been doing
lesson.
a lot of work with some of my students on low point control, and I've had a couple students. One of my long-term juniors, he's a pretty good player, but he continuously starts to struggle with consistent contact. Even he can put a nice draw on the ball, but sometimes he'll hit it fat, a little thin. And some of the stuff that I was noticing in some later lessons was I was watching the way his right ankle and right foot works, and it would begin to almost roll to the outside of his right ankle. And it was actually when Aaron was in town and when he was here that Saturday.
Our trainer.
Yeah,
Aaron
part
Kaufman.
of the team.
That's right.
And what I had Aaron had him look at was how his stability is with his ankle, and that was some of the stuff that I've looked at with other students as well. Is I see a lot of times when my students they'll start to sway almost a little too much, and they'll get their right knee outside, and their right hip will go outside of the line of their right foot, and they'll have trouble transitioning back to their left side. So when I put them on boditrak, I noticed a lot of that.
Yeah, that's the stability of that right foot.
It wasn't unstable heel to toe, but it was, you could see the outside of his foot was highlighted,
Right
and the
and left.
inside was gone.
Okay.
And I felt like that gave him, it was hard for him to be able to actually push off, get back to his left side. So that's when we stopped and did a few drills just to check his ankle stability, did make sure he was able to flex his ankle, and then checked his balance and stuff like that just to see if he was able to keep his balance.
Like
And it was-
TPI screens.
Right, yeah, just a couple basic things.
Yeah.
And notice he was fairly flexible with it. But when we got to balance, he could only hold it for a little bit, or I could see he was struggling. It was shaking quite a bit, especially when we put him onto the that mat over there, the super speed mat.
Right.
So whenever we
With
put
the
him on
sponge.
the sponge mat, and whenever he got on there, you could really tell he was wobbling quite a bit.
Okay.
And so sent him off with just some basic stuff like, had him try and pull. We wrapped a band around his ankles, and he had to try and pull his left foot out without getting his right foot to move. So little stuff like that would try and get him stable in that right foot. I would take his right, I'd wrap it around his right ankle, stand behind him, and
I like
he had
that.
to make a backswing where he actually had to try and pull against me.
Yeah.
Getting into his
Resistance training.
Yeah, more the inside of his left
Yeah.
foot, and then we just did some basic step drills where he had to go to the top, freeze, and then obviously go back down. We didn't do any of the high left leg.
I think just the mini step is
just some basic,
good for most people.
Getting the left foot to touch the right, and then step. Really getting him to be able to push off a lot easier. And I was checking on him the other day and saw him a couple of times on the range just walking by. And I saw one time he rolled that, he was out to that outside of the ankle again. And I just showed him, like, hey, we need to –
reminder.
You kind of just feeling the pressure. Like, I gave him a couple other things to work on. Put a towel underneath or the inside of his left foot and told him to put pressure on that towel
I like
the whole
that,
time as well.
Squash it.
And it really, when I finished his left knee and his right knee and his right hip never really got outside of his of his foot.
Did you find that his right leg extended a little bit more?
Yes. Yeah, that was it, because it would bend.
Yes.
It would stay
overflex.
It would stay in flexion and then rotate open. That was what was kind of strange about it, because that's what.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. That's what kind of made the ankle roll out. He would stay in flexion and then rotate.
There you go.
Get kind of the outside.
Did you mess with his foot flare at all, or did you kind of keep it the same?
Not really. It was already flared a little bit.
Okay.
So it wasn't like he wasn't pigeon-toed or anything.
Gotcha.
Like that. It was already flared a little bit. Nothing crazy there.
Yeah.
And then I actually had a student this morning who's just starting a long-term program, a lady, and she could put a pretty good move on the ball. She had decent swing speed, but she's still kind of a beginner.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of noticed the same thing. She was really struggling when she got to the longer irons of making good contact. Lots of thins, lots of tops, lots of fats. And what I noticed was she had a lot of sway. She had a decent amount of turn, but also had a lot of sway and too much sway. And I noticed the same sort of thing. Looking at her right foot, she would start to get the inside of the right foot off the ground, and you would really see her sway. So I'd draw the line from the outside of the right foot up, and you would see almost her entire knee and most of her hip would get outside of that line. Even though she turned well, she still swayed a whole bunch. Yeah. And it was interesting because this kind of gets back to how people learn. Mm-hmm. I would talk to her and try and get her to, okay, I want you to feel like there's pressure on the inside of your foot. I want you to feel like you're swinging in a barrel. We talked a little bit about that. I'm not a big fan of that thought. But
me either.
You say sort of, but just
it's not a bad visual for that particular person.
Little things. Yeah. And I even held a noodle that behind her right hip and said, okay, you got to stay
external,
within. Right? So working with a few things like that, and nothing really changed. In fact, it almost got worse. Until this is something I've been doing with a lot of students, and it's had some pretty good success. I'll put chalk in front of the ball, pink chalk in front of the ball, white chalk behind the ball on the mat, and just say you got to hit the pink chalk. First swing.
I stole that from you. It's really good.
First swing, immediately her hip was right in line with the top of her foot. Her foot never moved, very stable, and she started actually going from 4 and 5 degrees up with a hybrid and iron to even and 1-2 degrees down.
There you go. So you changed your intention, basically.
Right, yeah, exactly, and changed the way she thought about it, and her found out she's a little bit more of a visual learner than internal. So it was nice.
Could be a little auditory as well.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what we talked about. She actually mentioned that she was an auditory learner. So
there you go.
And so I was like, okay, well, there's obviously some visual in there as well.
That's
so
fantastic.
Before, did she have any sort of concept about where the bottom of the arc needed to happen?
Well, that was not until we started, or not until we got into it.
Is that one of the first things you talked about? Is here's needs to be the bottom of the circle.
Yeah, so I brought up attack angle and low point, and just said, okay, there's got to be an A next to low point, and there's got to be a negative attack angle. And like we had discussed what that means. That means pink chalk, not white chalk. The chalk in front of the ball.
So that's her field measurement on TrackMan.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And those are the only two numbers that we looked at, and immediately got a lot better contact and got some more distance and some difference between the clubs. That was the other thing that we weren't noticing was she would hit her 7-iron as far as her 9-iron and that sort of stuff.
So she was probably adding some dynamic lofts.
Right, exactly. Her 7-iron would go
if she's hitting up on it 4 degrees,
right, you're right.
She's turning the hybrid into like a 5-iron or 6-iron.
And then just a couple things to practice with, just some basic stuff. She said she doesn't get to practice very often, 20 or 30 minutes sessions, once or twice a week tops. So all we mentioned was just moving focus point to even making sure we're focusing on something in front of the ball that we have to erase. I put little broken tee in front of her ball and said, okay, you got to do this drill where the ball's going to go away as well as the broken tee. Even putting 2 tees on the front and the back of or on the sides of the balls, top and bottom of the ball, and you've got to make some sort of grass contact in front of those tees as opposed to behind. Little feedback messages for. But just a few simple things like that. It was good how I just by changing the cues, changed the swing entirely, and it was cool to show her, and she was blown away by the next couple of swings. Drawing that line,
flushed it.
Never even got close to it. Yeah. It was a great center pivot. It was very nice.
Very cool. Yeah, so that shows you how there's a lot of different ways to get students to change. Right. I mean, that's what you guys are probably figuring out. You've seen me give hundreds of golf lessons, and a lot of times they look completely out of whack, but the ball starts going better. You start digging into why in the world are you doing that, right? So any specific questions or any topics that you want to cover?
Yes,
I know Robbie's got something. George, curious George.
So there's been a couple competing schools of thought when it comes to introducing changes to the student and what you should expect in terms of outcome. One camp I've heard several well-known instructors talk about how after the information is presented and the student should have some intention of what they need to do, the next ball should be better. Versus I just shadowed a coach a couple of weeks ago who was down here teaching one of his clients, and he was really big on not being concerned about the outcome, because as soon as you introduce internal cues or what have you, a lot of those micro movements are the things that are really, really important to differentiating a good shot from a bad shot might be compromised. Whereas, and it leads me to kind of ask the question, all right, so what cues should we expect to give the student that will make the next ball better versus cues that will perhaps make those micro movements in the short-term contact compromised to a degree, but should show some long-term gains. So I was hoping to get some ideas as far as that's concerned.
Wow, that's a big one. That's pretty broad. But I get what you're saying, and it sort of leads me back to, I guess, my career and how my teaching has evolved. Because as you've heard me say, I think if you're teaching exactly the same way you did 15 years ago, then you haven't evolved. And we were talking about this morning. You asked me a question that I answered it. How long ago was that? Yeah. And my answer is different now because I've learned more about that particular subject. So I would say when my years at the golf school, we could go around and around with this whole scenario, is my lesson structure the way it was, where I would do, and it hadn't changed a lot structure-wise, but doing the interview, getting the analysis, setting them down, whether you're looking at video, whatever piece of equipment you're looking at, giving them to the recipe. I always prided myself on the first ball out of that scenario would be good. And I think over the years I've changed my tune in that. I don't think that's possible with everybody. And what I bring up there is I don't think you're a failure if the first ball doesn't go well. Okay. And I know who we're talking about, a good friend of mine that was here a few weeks ago, and I watched him teach as well, is I think you've got to not fall into the trap of being completely result oriented if you're trying to make a pattern change. Right. So that's why I'll do a lot of stuff off the ball too, because as soon as they tie what they consider a good shot into whatever they're trying to work on, I think that's a lot. Because a lot of times they may hit a good shot and they didn't do exactly what you wanted them to do. Does that make sense? Yep. Yeah. So it's like now it depends on the lesson. Okay. Yes. It depends on the type of lesson. And I guess it probably depends on the simplicity or the intricacy of the change. Okay. And that's big too. I think when you're making very difficult changes, whether it's an average player or a good player, I have them making a lot of rehearsal swings to where I start seeing the pattern change before I introduce the ball again. Yep. But even when I introduce the ball, it's more of sort of a litmus test of like, okay, how much did they retain feel-wise? Right. Now, if it doesn't come off perfect, and that's where you've got to share that with the student, right? I mean, you've got to make sure that their expectations and your expectations are the same, or they're going to get frustrated. Right. And it was interesting. I don't know if it said individual that we watched teach. It was a very type A individual he was working with, and that's one of the big things I learned by watching him teach was how he didn't get wrapped up into that type A individual's reactions. He would flush one where I thought it was really good. I saw that he was doing what that person wanted him to do, but he wasn't completely happy with the ball flight or the shot, and he got frustrated. Yep. So then you got to reel him back in and say, okay, hey, you did this and this and this well. Yes. It doesn't always mean that the shot's going to be perfect, but we're working towards this progression in your golf swing. So, yeah, I would say I've definitely changed my tune in that respects to where I don't think the first ball has to be perfect in order for you to, one, be comfortable and confident that you're working on the right stuff. Totally. That's the thing. Yeah. And that's, as teachers, we got to be patient sometimes and say, all right, the player's not going to be able to do exactly what you want them to do. Right? I mean, they're learning a new habit, a new skill. We're building myelin around a neuron, a deeply ingrained neuron that they've been doing for a long time. So but again, it's all about expectation management to where you and the student are moving in that same direction for that with that progression.
Totally. The one thing that I'll add to that is when we had James Ridyard come, there were a couple instances where the pattern was was in need of such a dramatic change that, like you just alluded to, he was always making sure that the feedback point or the point of positive or negative feedback was the same for the coach and the student.
Yes.
He used a lot of things like follow-through references that the student could actually check to make sure, okay, regardless of where the golf ball does, this is where your positive feedback is, this is where your negative feedback is, in that did you actually do what you tried to do? And that's something that I've definitely, with a lot of the kind of the reverse engineering and the follow-through stuff that I've been doing recently, it allows a student to take ownership of their feedback to say, okay, hold your finish, check to see if you did it or you're not, and if not, it doesn't matter what the ball does.
Right.
That's
100%. I think you guys saw me. I won't mention his name. He's one of the members, obviously, that I gave a lesson to last year. That I was really having trouble getting their path less to the left, and we had, and I was getting frustrated, right? So when after 3 or 4 lessons, if it's not changing, then I'm definitely looking at what I'm doing.
right.
It's not always the student's fault. It's it's the way I was giving him the information, whatever I was trying to get him to do. So I said, all right, I'm going to start with the follow through and work backwards.
Yep.
Right. So I basically had him put the club in front of the golf ball, and I moved him and educated him on where the club and where the body and where the feel is going to be from there to sort of waist high finish. Yep. And then got his feedback, and he was pretty shocked at like, oh, that's where you need me to move the club. I'm like, yeah. So it's basically what I call reverse engineering, but also connecting the dots. And then had him make a miniature backswing that would match up to get to that position. And it changed his pattern like that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I'm on to something here, right? So it's again a totally different golf lesson than working sort of the way I normally would, which is backswing and then transition. So any questions that you can think of, Seth?
Just a few things that I was looking at the other day. I've had a couple new students recently that have joined the team, and a lot of them are getting into, because technology and equipment has gained so much. Even in the last couple of years, I think especially in irons and woods have really improved a lot. And I've got several students, or 2 or 3 right now, that have come in the last couple of weeks, who don't play a lot, who want to get better, but also want to get new clubs. Mm-hmm. And my question is, at what point do you think you need to do instruction over club fitting or club fitting first? Have you ever run into a situation where you can do a club fitting first and then you make so many changes post club fitting that we might not work well with the clubs that we ended up buying? Or how do you go about assessing that?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because I mean it's such an important aspect, because I mean as coaches that's part of the interview is, I'm always kind of digging into their bag as I'm talking to them, just looking at their wear patterns and what shafts they have, how old their clubs are. I think the only time that I would say that I would go club fitting like right off the bat is if the clubs are just so outdated to where, I mean, if they're more than 20 years old and we got a situation now where the shafts are way too stiff, it's too heavy, the grips are, when they get the original grips on there, they can't even hold on the clubs, they're so bad. I would definitely suggest diving into club fitting sooner. But I mean, the first lesson, I'm not going to go, we're going to do a club fit. Right. I'm going to give them a golf lesson, and I'll probably maybe introduce a new club to them during the lesson after I get them hitting it, and then show them the difference and the feel and whatnot. But I think probably definitely go instruction first in most cases. I mean, 90% of the time. And then as soon as I start to see, because I like your point there is, if you're definitely making a shape change or you got a length issue or whatever, then the lie angle could change a lot. Ball flight could change a ton. So you wouldn't want to go and buy them brand new golf clubs. You got a guy that's tipping it out and swinging 12 to the left when he's not going to be doing that in 2 lessons. Where you're not going to fit him into a 6-degree upright club that's a half-inch long.
Yeah. You kind of have to predict ahead of time.
Right, exactly. So and they appreciate that too. I think when you tell them, it's like, all right, we need new clubs. I'm not going to fit you right now until It actually reminds me of a lesson that I had, or a fitting that I had just literally the last couple weeks. Driver fitting. Guy comes in, good guy. He doesn't play a ton, but he's starting to play a little bit more, and he wanted a new driver. Well, he was literally swinging, 10 to the left and hitting down about 8 and hitting big pulls, duck hooks, slices. So we got halfway through it, and I'm trying my best to like put another club in his hand. Let's see, trying not to like give him any information instruction-wise, because that's not what he came for originally. And then halfway through, we had to have a little meeting and go. He's like, man, this just isn't happening. I'm like, I usually hit a little bit better than this, but this is kind of my game. He goes, what do you think? And I said, well, honestly, I think you need to take a couple lessons. In 2 lessons, I could get you moving in a better direction, and we'd get a better feel to get a better club fit with this driver. So that's what we did. We did three lessons, and then after that, I literally got him hitting draws, high draws, which was awesome. He's happy. We fit him into a new driver, and now he's going to take more lessons. Yeah. So it's kind of like, but that doesn't happen all the time. But at some point, like, you got to have ball flight.
Right.
You can't fit grounders.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely a lot harder to fit a driver for that.
100%. Yeah,
because you're looking at you've got a guy that's really steep, swings left a ton, puts a bunch of spin on it. Then you're trying to find you're trying to bring launch up, bring spin down. And that's where you're completely changing the dynamics of the club. When you can get that guy to swing more level and out to the right, then you need completely different. So I had a guy the other day, one of my long-term students, who we did. So this was the progress with that was we started out, had old clubs. Hadn't been playing much, but wants to play more. Went on ahead and bought the level 2 package, the 6 lessons. And first lesson just started kind of working. It was a big, he was steep and left. And so we got him swinging a little bit more shallow, a little bit more out to the right, and immediately did an iron fitting, and it was fine. Got him into irons, no problem. Found 10 or 15 yards and some new TaylorMades. And then got into driver, and it was odd because he somehow hits his driver well. He's got an old Nickent that he's had forever, and somehow he hits it well. And when I had him out here the other day hitting, he was 6 or 7 degrees down and 4 or 5 to the left, which is completely different than his iron swing that he had just 3 minutes earlier. It was just a completely different golf swing. I don't know where it came from. But somehow he would kind of get that driver to work. And anytime I put any other driver into his hands, it was no good.
Wow.
So we did a little bit of a swing change towards the end, modified actually where he was putting the tee location, moved it forward a little bit to help get the attack angle up, and he was actually able to swing out to the right a little bit with that. And he got to the point to where now he can actually find a driver that goes further than his, and it was just interesting. I think there's always such a balance there when you're doing those club fittings of figuring out how much instruction's needed and what kind of
I try not to give too much, but sometimes you have to. And again, it's sort of the student too. Like you don't want to dig in there if they're closed off because they'll come in like, I don't need instruction, I just need a new driver or whatever.
It just always goes back to knowing the student.
Yeah, exactly. Just asking the right questions and open-ended, just like you would in a golf lesson. So that's good stuff. Anything else?
One small little bit. All right. Well, somebody just knocked down a flag out there. Anyways, with ladies, the typical lady who doesn't swing fast, doesn't get any separation between their clubs, or very little.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Is there anything that you see or do that can possibly get them more club head speed, or is there even a point where you just say, look, you don't need 14 clubs in your bag if one goes 3 or 4 yards further than another? I've been a big proponent lately in the last couple of years of very rarely do I see a lady who needs a 3-wood. The 3-wood goes shorter than the 5-wood.
You need loft.
You reach a point of diminishing returns of height to where a 3-wood goes shorter than a 5-wood. But I'm just trying to find more creative ways that I can get ladies to actually find a difference in their clubs. Like, I can't tell you how many times I see ladies, even fairly decent ladies, who are like, well, I don't use half the clubs in my bag because if I in this distance range, I need a 7-iron and then a pitching wedge. I don't need. There's just not much gapping between the pitching wedge 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, whatever it might be. And just curious if you ever break it down and tell ladies, look, you don't need a whole set. Even just go odd number clubs, or if there's anything that you notice that could help that lady.
Yeah, I think it again depends on the amount of work that they're willing to do, probably their ability to maybe get some speed. If they're not willing to change too much, then I definitely would go for the
unable to change.
Or unable to change. Yeah, that's the coach's call, whether it's age or physical ability limitation, whatever. I think I would definitely go with more loft, like a 5-wood or a 7-wood. Add more wedges. But as far as gaining speed, I think speed stick's great, or super speed. Anything I would have. I mean, before super speed golf came out, I'd have ladies swinging dowel rods really fast. I think they need to get their arm speed up, and that's what I would focus on with them. Is it's not usually because most women are stronger from the waist down, right? They have stronger. The legs are stronger, so they're using the ground pretty well. Where they get the lack of speed, I think, is the hands, arms, and wrists. So if you can get them, swinging light stuff like a dowel rod or a, super speed light stick faster, I think that's the way to go. It's kind of like teaching beginners, which I try to get their arms to go first. Let them release their wrist angles and just go as fast as they can with their hands and arms, and let the body sort of respond to the arm swing. See if you can get the speed up a little bit, and then obviously if they hit the ground in the right place, that helps. But that would be the big thing.
How often have you used the super speed sticks, and have you noticed any real gains?
Yeah, I need to use them more. I mean, I've got it sort of sporadically with my kids, and I've got a couple kids, junior elites, that are using them, and I'm starting to see a little bit of gains. But I think I need more. I need more data, like more time, to get them on more consistent protocols. But I think there's some value to it for sure. I kind of like them just for sequencing, and I mean, I love the step drill. I mean, I think as much as they can do step drills, and I like the left-handed piece to it because I think it helps them to slow down body parts, which is going to be a big part of creating speed, as Aaron always talks about. The deceleration, it's probably not the right word scientifically or biomechanically, but the deceleration of the body parts is what really makes the club go faster. And I think that making left-handed swings, I think, is super valuable.
Yep. Robbie, you had a student that started using the super speed sticks, and it actually hurt the sequence, right? Yes. Wasn't that a couple weeks ago we talked about that?
Yep, it did. Basically, the thing that I've and again, it could be the way that I'm presenting it. I'm not here bashing super speed. I think that their stuff is great, and I think that they definitely have some great science behind it, and have shown on numerous occasions that the sequence does improve. But I don't think that you can make a blanket statement to say that it always improves sequence, because I had one gentleman that was in dire need of more speed. He wasn't happy with how far he was hitting it, and so I got him on the program. But the problem is that the way that he was currently creating speed, or his current power sources, were causing bad impact dynamic, or basically the way the club was working against the ball was not conducive to having good launch, launch conditions.
Launch angles, yeah.
So when we started doing the overspeed training, what I found is that it actually made the current way that he was producing speed more ingrained. So I'm a believer that if you like the way that they're currently producing speed, and if you like the sequence the way it currently is, do it until you drop.
So elaborate on that. What was his power source, and then how did it change?
His power source was basically basically a shoulder elevation, and then it was kind of an upper body lunge, and then he was kind of pulling down. I guess you would call that
more of an
upper body kind of lunge and spin type of way that he was getting the club to generate speed in the downswing. Okay. When what he really needed was a bit more softness in the shoulders. He needed a bit more of a ground up sequence, where the left shoulder wasn't retracting and the trail shoulder wasn't protracting. He needed to kind of keep, obviously the torso can go, but to keep, more closed shoulders, I guess would be a way to describe it, and more kind of ground up.
Loading the fourth accumulator
Sure,
for your golfing
more
machine
more
guys
lead
out
arm
there.
against the chest
Exactly.
instead of the lead arm flying off so soon.
Yeah.
But what I saw is that if I would have had a club radar to get the path, I bet you that his path went from probably 6 down with his clubs with a driver to 8 or 9 down with a super speed.
Yeah.
I mean, he was having
Well,
trouble.
don't you think that's probably, I mean, how we're coaching them too? Like when,
Sure.
you can't just like let them swing a lot of times if you feel like they need technique change.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I did remember is something that Coach John Sinclair, he's told me, is that if you can get him swinging the orange whip and get him some step drills and stuff with that, he said it's rare that the orange whip doesn't improve the sequence. So what we did is we started with some orange whip swings, and then I said, okay, I want you to swing the super speed like you just swung the orange whip, and that actually started to have
I was going to say, so he had more,
but
we
had to change the way he was producing speed first. We couldn't just go straight into the super speed.
Yeah,
so,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's how you use it, obviously, and again, that's our job as coaches to evaluate that process. Really, really good feedback. All right, so before I get into your homework, I got one question from a friend of ours through the Guru Friday, #Guru Friday. So if you want, he actually tweeted this to me. He wants the best putting drill for club face control, and I thought I'd give him a couple, and you guys can chime in too on this as well. I think the gate drill's probably the best. I mean, but I would elaborate. Gate drill meaning just put a couple of tees out in front of the ball, maybe 3 or 4 inches, just wide enough for the ball to get through. But I would add, if you've got somebody that is having trouble with face control, and you sort of identified whether it's closing too much, is it opening too much, and you feel pretty sure that your path direction is reasonable, I would break it down even further and have them hit putts with their right hand only and test that, and then hit putts with their left hand only and figure out which is their best controlling side and which is the side that's causing the issue, because a lot of times you'll find that. And then also I would add to that to play around with the sequence a little bit, whether is it the right arm that's moving the club away? Is it the left arm? Is it the torso? Is it the shoulders? Sort of play around with that feel by just asking them to do something different every time to see which produces the best pattern. Even if you don't have, 3D capture, you can sort of get a pretty good idea of the sequence that they're moving the putter, which a lot of times maybe we don't think about in putting strokes, but that would be my advice. You probably, if you this individual's come down to watch me teach, but we'll call him Perfy putter. So he's been to watch me teach, so he's probably seen me do, I can't remember if he watched me do putting lessons, but a couple of my staple drills is one I call the Jordan Spieth drill, which I don't know what the name of it is, but I got it from Cameron McCormick. Was very kind to share this with me the year that Jordan won the Masters. We were walking around at the Masters, and I said to Cameron, what are you guys working on? And he said, we're trying to decrease his tolerances a little bit with his putting. And what he shared with me was that he would set up a 10-foot putt with whatever training aids you're working on, whether it's the Vizio mat. And I always usually use a chalk line with some type of external barriers of whatever the stroke needs. That's your choice as a coach. And you got to make 3 balls from 10 feet in a row. And then I set up tees at 30 feet, 25 feet, 20, 15, and then 10. And then the tolerance behind the hole is, I'll let that cart go by. The tolerance behind the hole is a foot to 3 feet. So basically the distance corresponds with the amount of tolerance that you give, for the safety zone behind the hole. So 30 feet, you get 3 feet, 25 feet, you get 2.5 feet, and so on. So then they have to get 3 from in the safety zone, from from 30 feet into that 3 feet circle or 3 feet zone behind the hole, and then you go back to the 10-footer again. So you keep bouncing back and forth. It's kind of like muscle confusion for putting. So I don't like my players to sit there and hit 6-footers for 100 in a row. I just don't think that's golf. Yep. I want them to move back and forth and change the environment. And then the other one that I've gotten from my friend John Graham is, I call it leapfrog. We all use that. It's just great. So you set up a 6-foot and then a 12-foot quadrant with 3 tees, 0, 6, and 12. They have to roll the first ball just past the first tee as close as they can get, and then every ball has to go a little bit farther than the previous ball, and you see how many you can fit in that 6-foot quadrant. 10 is a really, really good score. I think 12 is the most I've had. One of my tour guys, Charlie Bull, did 12. But I try to get my kids to do at least 7, and the skill level obviously reflects that. So those are two of my favorite. If you do those 2 putting drills, I think you're going to get better at putting. You guys want to share club face control drill that you got?
Yep. So this one would be, I guess, not for the guy that has a very consistent bias or a player that can't control the face right and left. So he's pushing and pulling because there's a lot of I don't know if there's been any studies that show that increased face closure through impact has an effect on start direction on putting, but I found this to be helpful for players who miss right and left and have very limited control of the face. So just called differential practice. Basically what you're doing is you're intentionally changing the face within different tolerances, right and left. So it's called Humpty Dumpty drill. So basically what you do is you set up 5 tees right in a row with a ball on each of the 5 tees. Now you have a start point and you have like a 1-foot chalk line. So you're starting the putter aligned to the middle tee. So if you can imagine, you've got a ball in front of you, you've got about a foot in front of that ball, and then perpendicular to that line, you've got 5 tees in a row with all the 5 balls on the tee. So you start with a putter aimed at the middle tee, and then at any ball that you want, you have to knock over the ball that's sitting on one of the other 5 tees. So if you have a player that is struggling, you can actually make the space between the tees either shorter or wider, depending on if you really need that. Okay, I want to arrive at 5 degrees open, 5 degrees closed, but if you've got a better player that has a bit more control of the face, you can put those tees up much closer together to where they're opening at 1 degree to the right, 1 degree to the left, and they're constantly jumping back and forth.
So they've got to change the face angle
exactly
on every putt.
On every putt,
yeah,
right. And then they finish with the one that is the straight. So if they can,
it's like find right, find left, and then find straight.
Goldilocks. If they can if they can find left, if they can find right, I find that they do a better job at finding straight.
It's good. Very good. Seth, anything?
I love the gate drill. I use that one a lot, probably the most of any others. Even just having some sort of a barrier to putt through as well, that the putter passes through and the ball passes through. I like that. Just some sort of consistent path to match the face as well. Because I do think sometimes the path can change the face. And sometimes,
100%.
Sometimes if you're hitting on the heel or toe, that can change, any sort of consistency to keep the path the same. I like, similar to what you've done with the Humpty Dumpty, even just putting a tee, making them putt straight putts, 2 tees, and trying to actually hit anything that you can have to hit something smaller than a hole. Poker chip drill is good. Just hitting, just putting a tee in the ground and saying you got to hit the tee. If you can hit a tee, you can hit a hole. Simple stuff like that, combined with gates or anything like that, is I like for face control as well.
Awesome.
I know a lot of your stance on line versus ghost, no pattern or lining on the ball. Please just elaborate on, for those guys that do struggle with face control, would you suggest them putting a line? Do you like the lines facing the hole or parallel to the face, or ghost, or have you, obviously I'm sure some people have had success with both.
Yeah, that's a great question because, it makes sense logically that a line would help you to aim and would help you to see start direction. The problem that I have with the line is that I've seen very few people that can actually line up the line, first off, and then 2, then they can't even square the face to the line. So it's like it makes no sense to me unless they can demonstrate those two skills, which I think players can do it because obviously there's pros out there that do it. But I've seen guys that they think it's helping their putting, but they got, I'll say, well, this is 6 inches to the right. They got the thing aiming 3 inches to the right, and then they got the face aimed 6 inches to the right, and they think they've done a good job. And it just doesn't make any sense to me unless you can actually do it and demonstrate it. I think it's very difficult. And again, it's depends on the lesson, depends on the player, and especially if I've got a player that's way too internal with, worrying about their putting stroke and not worried enough about the external, intention of distance choice and then seeing curve and then some of the visuals I think that are important to putting. I'll take the line away in a heartbeat. It's funny when you bring that up. I had a really good tour player come to me last week that I'd worked with a little bit with putting, and he was really struggling, very frustrated. And this is a good segue into why we test before we start messing with mechanics. Is I had him on the putting green first, and I literally just took him through my typical testing and talking to him, asking him questions, and all I heard was that he was trying to make perfect putting strokes, that he was really focused on his stroke. He was trying to do this with his putting stroke, and every time I did the test, he would come up short and low, mm-hmm. and that which was making him even more frustrated. And so he thought it was a stroke problem, and so we had some discussion on intention and got his eyes to trace the entire putt and where he's trying to stop the ball. Started getting him looking beyond the hole, and things started getting better. And he said, well, you haven't told me anything about my stroke yet, and we're probably an hour into it, okay? And I said, well, I'm going to take you down and put you on Sam Putt Lab, not because I want to show you what you're doing wrong, but I want to show you what you're doing right, okay? And I put him on the Putt Lab, and his putting stroke is as good as I've ever seen, okay? And the guy's not making any putts. The guy's playing for a living, right? Mm-hmm. So, one, he's like, wow, takes a lot of pressure off the fact that his putting stroke's fine. Okay, and we can give him a couple little tweaks here and there, but nothing. That was definitely not why he was not holding more putts. It was more of the other stuff. It was more of the cerebral, the arts, the artsy part of the creative part of putting rather than, the mechanical part. So quickly we started getting more into seeing the curve. We talked a little bit about green reading, so all the stuff we do, which is reverse engineering from the intention back to the ball, and then the hole gets in the way stuff, then whole ball start going in. So I'm curious to see, hopefully, he's gonna putt better under competition, but getting them out of what they're thinking about that's holding them back is huge. So that drill, taking the hole out of play and getting them to focus on distance control and adding curve, I think is super important. And then tweaking the stroke on the back end is good. Awesome. All right, so here's an idea. I call it homework, but this is just something I was thinking about this morning because I know we like to do projects of sort of looking at swings and figuring out why these guys on tour are doing what they're doing. But I was looking at the PGA Tour stats, and we talk a lot about driving, right? We're trying to figure out what makes good drivers of the golf ball and what makes poor drivers of the golf ball. So I want you guys to look at the driving accuracy versus driving distance on the PGA Tour. Pick a player, and it's basically the last 5 or one of the last in driving accuracy, okay? And find some swings. And talk to me next time we meet. Talk to me about what you think they need to do different in order to drive it straighter. And then look at the top 5 that are really good, and let's talk about what they do well.
Yep.
Okay? So let's kind of dig into that. And then sort of piggybacking on that would be, all right, try to figure out, looking at the stats, is who is the highest in driving accuracy. So I guess it'd be total driving. Who's the highest in driving accuracy that hits the ball the farthest on tour? Who's driving it the longest and the straightest? And let's see let's see where they stand on the money list and in the FedEx Cup So dig into that, and let's pull up some swings next time of a couple of players that would fit into those categories, and kind of dig in and see if the stuff I'm not going to share with what we've been talking about of what we think is one of the keys to driving well. I'm not going to share that with the audience right now. They'll have to tune in next time. So
gotta keep them guessing.
That's right. All right. Well, thanks, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed just a little live look in of some of the stuff we do here as far as staff training, and this was obviously a little more formal. But it gets us together and gets us thinking about stuff and continuing to get better. So appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you having us.
Thank you for having us on.
What's up, guys? Guru here again. Before you go, just a couple of things. Reach out to the guys and myself on Twitter or Instagram. You can reach me at Golf Guru TV. You can reach Seth Merz at Seth Merz and Robbie Failes at Rob Failes Golf, and let them know how much you appreciate the info, and give them a little pat on the back. So, and we always enjoy doing these sessions, and it's kind of cool to bring all of our training and our conversations to you guys. So hopefully it helps you. So don't be afraid to share these podcasts. I really, really appreciate the support out there. I've gotten so many text messages from friends and emails, even some from like China, which is just blowing me away. And the downloads are still coming. So I'm really, really grateful to all the feedback. And I'm going to try to keep putting out the content. So I hope you enjoy the show. Thanks for listening, and we will